So, hello. Bit nervous for this, I'm not going to lie. Something I've been saying I was going to do for a while. Kind of a debrief on everything that happened, my experience in the GB team. I think it's important to start off with some kind of obvious things. Again, my objective is to tell the truth as best as possible, but also like highlight what happened, what was said, and then also highlight, the way I felt, my emotions, maybe some like skepticism, some like subjective like sort of opinions, and just try and distinguish them very clearly because you can draw a lot of conclusions and get like feelings about the way you view things in these situations. So I think it's important to try and distinguish. So again, that's something I will try and do. Whether or not I'm able to will be hard because the nature of elite performance sport, competition, strong personalities, it can be quite hard to not let that stuff get in the way. So yeah, basically I tried to give a bit of context to me and my situation in like the My Story video that I did, just giving some background, kind of the way I view things. And a lot of this is like my values and my opinions on things. I'm quite a strongly valued person, quite strongly opinionated, but I wanted to just try and give as much background information for those that were curious to kind of give the most context. So to summarize it, I was picked up into the GB start program at the age of 19 years old, trained hard, lots of ups and downs along the way. Eventually got into the GB team, raced for GB for one race, and then I was kicked out / left / got on well again. That's what we'll get to in a bit. From the GB team in, what would it be, December of 22. So I technically got in, it would have been after the original Tokyo Olympics that it was planned, which was, it was meant to be October 2020. And then I was kind of like a satellite thing as they delayed it. Everybody, all the new people that they were going to bring in did a satellite program, and I was part of that. So I was kind of in, but not really in the actual center. And I was really only in the GB center for about 6 months, 8 months maybe. Actually there, I spent about 6 months away from it, recovering from glandular fever. Where should we start? So again, trying to be objective. I'm going to keep getting these words mixed up. Trying to make clear the difference between being objective and subjective. So, getting into the GB team, I got in quite late. Again, this isn't something that's relevant, but I got in quite late, around 26, 27. Most people that get in either get in at 22, 23, or they give up because they go and get like a life or whatever they want to call it, get a real job or an office job. But I very much was lucky to be supported by my fiance and my parents to kind of have the opportunity to get in. So again, a big part of the kind of emotional side of this is that that support and getting so close to achieving my goal. Ultimately, my goal was to go to the Olympics, to win a gold medal. But again, something I'll touch on is my enjoyment of the process. And that's, again, something that I feel like I'll get into that later. But my goal was to get to the Olympics. I really wanted the people that were closest to me to get to watch me at least race for GB and get to experience some of the positives that I had and how awesome that was, and just to kind of get to share that experience with them. And through lockdown, which of course I'm not complaining about the regulations that were there at that point, is very much peak lockdown when we raced, and we were lucky to get to race. Even it could have very much been cancelled. So, that's part of the reason they didn't get to see it. And then the other part is also the way my time in the team unfolded. I got into the GB team, and I wanted to be a positive impact and try and show, how can I best make the best impression possible? And for me, that was being a good athlete, saying yes to everything, showing up, completing every single training session, never complaining, always having a good attitude, always being happy to be there, and just showing very good traits of, what you think a good athlete would be. And I think, I maybe was rewarded with that now. Like, for example, on the first day I showed up so early. I showed up like 20 minutes before anybody else got there. I was at the first one at the gate. It was a bit stupid. In my head, I was like, oh, that'll make a difference. But ultimately, not really. But yeah, I'm gonna criticize the system and the coaches, one coach in particular, and the system. And I want to be clear at the start that it's a massive privilege to have been able to get paid to do a sport, especially a sport that wasn't for profit, like rowing. Rowing doesn't draw in crowds, so it was very much through the national lottery and the UK government that I got paid to do a sport. So I was very grateful for that, regardless of how it turned out. And so much of the support staff and the other coaches and the GB team were fantastic to work with, and I had a great time working with them. Again, I'm not criticizing them. Likewise, the guys in the GB team, it was honestly like, and the women as well, like we didn't really train with them as much, so we didn't kind of mingle with them as much, but the training group that I was in was just like fantastic. And the best way I could have described the first part of the year that was fun was, it was like being at school, except you're in a class with 30 of your best mates. Not that I had 30 best mates. And you have 3 classes, and every class is PE, and you have like an hour break in between it. So you're basically just, rowing's still hard, don't get me wrong, but you're just chatting nonsense all day. And it was very, very fun at the start. And for me, I think where that kind of fun came from, again, maybe this is starting to get into, again, me being subjective, my opinion, when there's a clear ranking of where you stand, you can be a bit more secure. And in rowing, it's kind of cool in that if someone beats you or you beat them, it's very much like you did it. There wasn't any sort of like, in contact sports where there's interference and people can get pissed off at each other. With rowing, it's very much the better rower wins. And while you might not be happy to be ranked lowest, you still respect the other people. And when you're given a clear ranking system, you understand that, and you look internally, you don't look externally. And to get better, that's what you have to do. But anyways, the first half of the year was very much like that. There was a clear ranking. We did ergs and single performances and stuff. And, I think that kind of, and I had good performances and I had bad ones, and regardless of that, it didn't really affect the team culture. It didn't really affect the feeling in the room or anything like that, or the tension, because we all knew where we stood. But it was kind of come the new year when things started to change and the feeling of trust started to go. So again, if I can kind of give some more context on like what the GB team's like, it's like you've got 30 people, like you're not living in a real world. You've got 30 people. Again, I remember I spoke to somebody who's an ex-GB rower before I got in, and he said, take advantage of it, appreciate it, because you'll never be around so many driven people that are all focused so much on the same goal, and like everything that you're doing with all those people is so prioritized on like one thing, which is like going as fast as possible in a boat and ultimately winning an Olympic gold medal. For me, it was always about, if I can get down to the root of it more, like how fast can I get? Like it was never as external as that. Again, I'll be going off on tangents here all the time, but it was always how internal can I get? How much can I focus on myself to maximize my speed? And I always thought if you do that, you're going to put yourself in a position to be as fast as possible. So, why prioritize the Olympics? And think about that all the time when that's not going to get you anywhere. You have to look internally, and this is something, you speak with some of the athletes in the GB team, and it was very much agreed upon. So yeah, I'd say come January, come the new year, things started to change, and obviously you're getting closer to selection, which is in April. But maybe one thing again, okay, an opinion of mine, totally subjective. GB rowing is one of the highest funded sports publicly in the UK, and with that comes a lot of pressure and expectation to perform. And if you can come up with like a formula for success, then that is relieving for a coach if they can take the pressure off themselves and have a formula that works, that is successful. Then that makes the life easier for the coach, and it makes the common variable, because obviously GB rowing has had success in the past, and yeah, it's obviously been one of the best countries in the world at rowing. Like, there is an element to, obviously that system works and the formula that they have works for success. At the same time, you also kind of have to question, in my opinion, you know, how much of that is down to the schools that are feeding in, which of course is supported by British rowing, and the feeder systems, and just the pool of athletes that you have, and the kind of tradition of rowing in the UK. How much of that is it down to, you know, just the sheer amount of money that you can pay full-time athletes to row full-time, like, and then how much of it is down to the program? Now, of course, like, don't get me wrong, it's a very successful program, and since me leaving, again, in my opinion, is more down to the athletes. But, you know, they've had, with this formula, they've had success. I can't remember how many medals they got, loads of golds, like, what did they... Yeah, loads of golds and silvers last year across the men and women. And Paris, I believe they had another good year. So the system does work. But anyways, what I think some of the problems, I think it can be better. And I think there's a serious understanding of success and mindset. And again, I want to be clear, this is my opinion, but I feel like with rowing and good rowing coaches, they come from all walks of life that they've had their experience, and it's very much been crafted based off personality. I think good coaches have their own style, and it's based off their personality, and it's not one size fits all. It's very much, I've had plenty of good coaches, and they all have their different styles, and it's very much, you have to be so confident in it, but you also have to have such an open mind at the same time. And it's that weird balance of confidence and insecurity. But I think, you know, you need to have a coaching style that's suited to you. But if you constantly bring in coaches like that into something, when you try to have a formula, there's just going to be nothing but clashes. And that's not, like, I think that would work better if you brought in the best coaches. But if you create a system that has a formula for success where it doesn't allow for any input from the coaches or any adjusting, then one, I don't think you're going to get the best coaches coaching their style that will get the best results. I also don't think having a formula approach to athletes gets the best out of the athlete. But what it does do is, say, the formula gives you, again, security in what you're doing, but it also, when you go to a funding meeting, you can say, well, this is the formula, and the reason why it's not working is because of the athletes, not because of us, not because of me. In order to bring into coaches into the system that will buy into this formula, again, which personally I think is wrong. I think can be a lot better. I think it's wrong. I'm not saying it doesn't work, because obviously it does. I just think it can be a lot better. And it can also be a lot better in a way that doesn't result in athletes with depression, severe mental health problems, anxiety, borderline PTSD symptoms. Again, I don't want to try and be melodramatic. I don't know how right it is to use that word for that situation. But what it comes down to is a serious lack of understanding from coaches who have been brought up from the ground, because GB rowing want to have coaches that they can mold with their style and not have a coach that has been influenced by one of the vets at their club and then influenced by another coach that they got coached by in America when they studied abroad, things like that. They don't want that. They want coaches that are raw. And then what that results in is a coach that has never competed at a high level, but a coach that will follow a formula and not think and fit into the system. And the result of that is coaches that don't have an open mind and that think that things like creating uncertainty, creating tension, creating, pressure in the wrong way, again, something I'll get into a bit more, they think because they've not been through that themselves, they see it and they have this idea that they think that's what works for getting athletes faster. And there's just so many situations that I came across in my time in the GB team that, I was in no way the best, but I do know I was an elite rower and I had a very good mindset. And there would be some conversations where you try and, explain something and like your thought process behind it, but they just couldn't understand it. And there was just this disconnect between, and trust. And I've worked with coaches before. And again, I'm not dragging any of these other coaches I worked with into this video, but I've worked with coaches before that have experienced high elite sport, and they can understand it when you say things like that I would then go to say to the GB coaches. So again, I keep saying GB coaches. It's basically name drop time. Paul Stannard, the head of the GB rowing team now, the men's team. He's pretty well documented, especially in conversations with people, that he thinks that this is the way that you create speed for athletes, that you create a system where athletes are meant to feel uncertain of their spot. He views it as when you do that, they'll work harder, and that's what motivates them, that feeling insecure in your spot, it's almost like a lack of trust, that if they didn't feel that, then they would get complacent and they wouldn't push themselves as hard as possible. But what it does do is it betrays trust, makes them resent the place more, makes them not want to be there more, and maybe that's what makes them not want to push. It's certainly what made me not want to go back. But again, in order to get into the GB team on its own, like if you have the mindset that you need to be in an environment where you're created, like you're uncertain, to train hard, like you're never going to make it into the GB team. You're never going to go and win gold medals at the world champs. But they seem to think they're having this kind of uncertainty. And again, there's a difference between like uncertainty and that's created versus uncertainty that's, athletes accept. Like when you go into a 2K test or a race, obviously you're uncertain about the result, and the pressure that comes from you and the pressure that comes with performance is totally normal, and you accept that. But that's very much like an internal, it's not coming from other people, and like it's not plotted against you to like try and twist you into like put you through hardship that's going to get the most out of yourself. Like, again, I don't know how well I'm explaining this, but all I'll say is that I know it's still happening, and there's people that are, again, I just want to be careful not to like drag anybody else into this that doesn't want to. It's still happening, and it has happened, and I know plenty of people I've had conversations with that have struggled since leaving because of this like environment that's created. But one thing I kind of wanted to get back to the point was like being in this environment of such focus and such intensity. Even with the group of people that we were training with were like amazing. Like it was just everybody got on so well. Like everybody was so friendly and stuff. But even then, when we went from this, ranking system at the start closer towards selection, the coaches started artificially creating this environment and you have all these people that are so focused on this one thing that it just creates like an immense amount of pressure, and it makes it feel like the world is ending. And maybe an example, like at the start of the year, there was an issue in the changing room with the towels where, some of the staff didn't want us keeping towels in the changing room. They wanted us taking them home because of like germs and COVID or whatever. But basically everybody, all the rowers were like, oh, we should just be able to hang them up. It was not a big deal at all. But like it just turned into like this massive like fiasco where, because it affected everybody, because we're like, that's our one thing that we're doing is going rowing. Like, it might be like a little, like, not a big deal, but it just blew up into something that was very much out of proportion. And yeah, I'm just trying to give some context into the way like this pressure can be like multiplied. And when you have like your existence, for me and many of the people there that you're training towards for so long, like the importance that you put on it is, and your value as a person is put on it. When it's questioned, and when your trust is questioned, then it becomes very like horrible place to be. You feel like you can't trust people. I remember, again, I think the first trigger, again, I don't want to use trigger because it's too strong a word for that situation. That's more like mental health and stuff. But the first kind of like negative experience I had was so my aim was to be the person who completed the most amount of sessions when I got there. And I wanted to be the last person to have to take a break. And I trained for months. I trained through illnesses. I pushed through injuries. And again, that's not something I suggest, but I wanted to make the best impression possible. So I thought that would be done by training consistently and showing I could just do the training and be relied on. And I did. And I think maybe there's one other person, but I was keeping tabs. I think me and another person we were going to try and see who could go longer. And that's not a smart way to train, but we thought that was a good way to make a good impression. And I did get to like the last person, like last one standing, where when I say that, like, the odd person would have to miss a session because of a back or a itchy throat or something. But yeah, I thought that had maybe like given me then the chance, not the chance, but I was like, right, okay, I'm at least the last man standing now. In my head, I was like, okay, now if there's actually something when I should back off, I've got my place a bit more secured. I can take it if I need to. And I remember the first time I tried to do that, it was in January, it was before the 5K test, and I said to one of the coaches, like, look, I'm not right, I need to take a break. I'm definitely getting on well, like, and we had a 5K test around the corner, and I was like, I'm definitely not feeling right for this. And yeah, I did, like, I told them and stuff. I told them I'm not well, expecting like, yeah, cool, Jack, you trained so hard, like, yeah, cool, you obviously need rest, like. But no, they told me like, no, I need to do it. Like, I was like, okay, maybe I just didn't say it with enough conviction, who knows. But yeah, and then I went and did the 5K, felt terrible, got a bad result, and it wasn't bad as well, but it wasn't far off my PB. But afterwards, again, that was my first time when the coaches, they just didn't speak to me. Mainly, like, Paul didn't, like, obviously ignored me. And for me, just looking at him, I was just like, what are you doing? Because do you think, like, it was like, he was purposely doing it. Again, okay, subjective, my opinion here. Are you doing this to motivate me? Like, if I don't do well, then you're not going to speak to me. And also just having like already voiced that I wasn't ready for it. Again, this isn't the main point that I have here, but this is just kind of the first kind of feeling of trust getting broken. Again, another thing that they could not get their heads around. So more context, 2019, I went vegan, plant-based, at the start mainly for diet reasons. I wanted to try it out. I stay with it now because of ethical reasons. But anyways, and part of the reasons as well, like, again, just a quick trigger warning talking about like weight loss and stuff here. But I was to like the heavier side for a heavyweight rower, so I wanted to drop some weight, so I tried to make the single go faster, and I did. I dropped around like 10 kilos, but one of the strongest correlations with erg scores is your body weight. So naturally my single got faster, became a better rower, but I became slightly slower on the rowing machine. And they were looking at all my times from 2019, and they just could not get their head around the fact that I was 10 kilos lighter. They would view it as, I did get some PBs as well on the 30 rate 20, the more aerobic stuff. I'm not going to get into the training here, but they just couldn't get their heads around the fact that like I was lighter, and that's the reason I hadn't PB'd on my 2K. I got 2 seconds off, like I was 2 seconds off my PB, 10 kilos lighter, but they couldn't wrap their heads around that. But again, they saw me being a good bit off my 5K because I was the furthest off my 5K PB because I was 10 kilos lighter, and I had also voiced to them before that I was not well, but there's just some things that they just would not be able to see in it. Again, they didn't speak to me after the 5K. Again, this feels a bit melodramatic, but this is just the start. And I found out through one of the other support staff, again, not naming names, but that they had gone and spoke to that sports staff who then spoke to me, and they were saying, you know, I just don't get what Jack, like, what's wrong with Jack? Like, why can't he just, like, PB? Like, what's wrong with him? And, like, I was like, first off, why wouldn't you go and tell me that? So, again, in this intense environment, that feeling of trust, which needs to be there so much for a coach and an athlete to work well, it just started to fade. It started to snap. And one thing as well, like, is important to note in the GB team, now this is something that everybody there accepts, and I'm not criticizing this because I know there's not a solution to it, but when you're not in the GB team, your coach, so whoever your coach is when you're trying to get in, like at your club or wherever, they want what's best for you regardless. So if you have a great performance or a bad one, they are always going to fight your case. They're always going to try and get you as fast as possible, and that means you always have support. But when you're in the GB team, you've got 7 or 8 seats, and you've got 10 rowers going for those seats. If you miss that seat, you've not got a coach in your corner that is like 100% behind you. And again, that doesn't help, but I don't want to bring too much attention to that because I know that you can't create a system where a coach is always going to want your best interest. There always has to be some level of partiality. Is that a word? But yeah, again, I don't know how important that is. Actually, one thing before I forget as well, there were times when I was like treated well as well. I was granted exceptional status because I'd won the November trials based off my international racing standards. I didn't meet the criteria to get to a certain level of funding, which was £1,500 a month. I only met the £1,000 a month, which would have not been enough. Not complaining, but anyways, Paul, after November, he did give me exceptional status, putting through an application for me to get onto this funding. So just to be clear as well, like I wasn't treated like shit. I wasn't treated badly all the time. There were some times like that when you are felt like you have your back and stuff, but it was off the back of a first place at November. It wasn't off the back of a 5K where, you know, I wasn't well and 10 kilos lighter than I used to be. But yeah, and just from there, as crew selection started to happen, which is a bit more like subjective, and there's a bit more, it's not as clear as, you know, erg ranking fastest to slowest or single speed fastest to slowest. There's a bit more personalities and gelling, and seat racing isn't even again, for those that don't know, seat racing is like you race 2 match crews, and then you measure the distance. Say one crew wins by 5 seconds, you swap, and then you race again, and if that margin changes, or even if it goes from 5 seconds to 4 seconds, the people that swap, the person that closes the gap is deemed the faster person. And likewise, if that crew then overbeats this one, again, that person who swapped into this boat would be deemed faster. That's what seat racing is, if I explain that well. Just to give people that don't know context. But yeah, so again, this feeling of uncertainty just started to create and for me, I'm very much somebody who enjoys training, like actively, like, you know, loved being in the team environment and stuff, and like actively, like really just enjoyed the process more than anything. Like I still enjoyed racing and really did, like, was super competitive with everyone else, but, you know, more like I would say I was an internal racer, and I just enjoyed seeing like what my potential was. So yeah, that started to fade though, and I think kind of to fast forward to one point, again, on training camp in Aviz, Portugal, anybody who loves rowing would love rowing there, because you get 10K either direction, glass, sunshine, pretty flat conditions most of the time, an amazing facility, amazing gym, amazing ergs. Well, the ergs are a bit rough, but whatever. Not Michelin star, but, you know, first class hotel, amazing food, the perfect place for rowing, and it was by far the most like I'd ever hated rowing in my life, and my personality had gone. I wasn't laughing. I was aggressive. Like, I'm not an aggressive person at all, but I was like, throwing pillows and stuff like that in my room and just like shouting over things that, in the big picture aren't that important. But when you're in that world, especially in that camp, like, and even now, like that, having that camp, that experience on that camp, I occasionally still get like, I don't want to say nightmare, but I still imagine I have a dream I'm back there and be like, get me out of here. So part of the reason that is I think the coaches as crews started to form and get closer to selection, in my opinion, would purposely create uncertainty for your ranking. And they say things like, this boat's going out, it's just a training camp, it's not for selection, but it was clearly like the world championship quad that they were looking at. And some people would, with the highest ranked rowers, again, which I wasn't, I was ranked lower, mid to maybe low ranking, and they'd put the best people out, and then maybe there would be one seat where there'd be somebody who you could arguably say that you'd be ranked higher than or lower, but you just wouldn't get given a chance and you wouldn't get given an explanation. And what that does is it creates and that kind of is constantly happening, and you might be getting put in the worst boat for a time and with no explanation. Yeah, you're just made to feel very uncertain about what your position is, what your ranking is, and what it does do is it gets people talking behind everybody's backs, because they formulate this sort of like uncertainty in the correct way, in that everybody thinks everybody is faster than each other, and you can't go behind other people's back. You can't go and say to somebody, because if I think I'm faster than athlete A, and athlete A thinks they're faster than B, and B than C, and C than me, like, you can't really go and like go for support and say you're struggling with something, because it's always like your feelings. And I do, again, my opinion, think that they want you to feel that way, because if you're struggling, if you're getting treated like this, then you can't go to your friends, to your teammates, and like, you can't like get support, and you can't stand together, and you can't go and raise it to the coaches and say that you don't like being treated this way. If you feel like you can't trust your teammates, then you're not going to rise against the coaches. You're going to feel like you're on your own, and you're going to be an easier athlete to manage. Now, yeah, it was just, that was the worst experience I've ever had in my life rowing. And again, it's hard for me to like get back and explain like that kind of way I felt there. And I know I wasn't the only one that felt that way. But it was by far the most I've ever hit. And I honestly thought about leaving there, like, and getting on a bus and getting the hell out of there, because it was just such a negative, horrible place to be. And it was all facilitated by the coaches, mainly Paul Stannard. And it's just, for me, it's like, supporting an athlete that is there, that has clearly showed talent, and creating a clear ranking, and being very clear on like your purposes behind things. Like, that is what gets the most out of athletes, and it just comes from this misunderstanding of what inspires an athlete to be the best. Like, fast forward, coming back, I was pretty pissed off after that, and I'm not gonna lie, like, training pissed off, like, it can help. Like, if you can get pissed off at people, like, it helps. Like, you can, like, it can help for a short amount of time, but it's not sustainable. And in my case, but yeah, anyways, so fast forward to the week into the final trials, big selection. Again, I know my place isn't secure, and that's absolutely fair enough as well, because again, okay, ranking, I'd come 1st of November, 8th of December. We didn't have any conclusive seat racing stuff, but I was probably like bottom third, maybe like close to the halfway point. And then I would say maybe upper bottom third, like if the bottom third, I was near the top of the bottom third. I don't know. Okay on the ergs, not the slowest, but definitely not the fastest. And then February I came 5th. So I was doing okay, but at the same time I was competing against experienced GB rowers, so some very, very good rowers and stuff, and people all put my hands up and absolutely say they deserve the seats that they're in now. And yeah, I knew my spot wasn't 100% secure, and I was going to have to put in a good performance at the April trials, the final trials. So I knew I had to do a good one. It started to go well again, get close to what I thought my potential was hitting some of my fastest speeds in training. Again, I don't want to be that guy who was like, oh, I was going really fast and then I just got on well and you would have beaten me. Like, I hate that sort of stuff when people do that. But I think, there's some people that in the pieces before trials, they don't go fast to them on purpose. And then there's some people that go really fast to them before and then don't go fast at the trials. For me, if I go well in pieces, I know I'm going well. And I was going well in the lead up to that, and I was all going great. But probably around sort of a week out, started to get like an itchy throat, started coughing, then gradually started to develop coughing very hard and stuff. And then it kind of just escalated. I was still going well, and the coaches did say, if you're not feeling well, let us know, we can change things. But again, for me, that's something that they don't understand, where you have to put like bullshit blinders on, is one of my old coaches used to say. And any sort of external factors that aren't going to be helping you go faster, you cannot focus on them. And if you draw attention to the fact that you're not feeling well, you're not whatever, you got a sore back, if you draw attention to that, you verbalize it, and you go about telling people, you're only going to cement that more in your head, and you're only going to be more likely when you're racing to be thinking about that. And again, that's something I did try explaining this to the coach. They're just like, they cannot understand it. But anyways, I didn't tell them I wasn't feeling well. One, mainly for that reason. Two, because the last time I did, I was told to do it anyway, so I didn't see the point. But anyways, it got very, very bad, and to the point the Thursday night, I woke up on the Friday. I didn't wake up because I didn't sleep, basically. I was coughing, painful cough all night, not a wink of sleep. And yeah, I went to the coach. I said to Paul that I don't want to do it. I don't think I should do it. I'm not well. I thought maybe I had COVID. I said to him I don't think I should be doing it. And he was dealing with a lot of other athletes that were pulling out, coming back from COVID. It was like another, like one of those peaks in the UK at that time, April 22. Which you can understand is frustrating as a selector, and everybody's under pressure. But, doctors get stressed, teachers get stressed. Does that excuse them from making bad decisions? No. Like, when you're in a position of authority, when you're in a position of responsibility, you have to be able to deal with pressure and deal with stress and make the right decision that isn't going to negatively impact somebody's health. So he said, when I said that you can pull out if you want, but if you do, that's going to cause you some problems. So that, to me, is pretty clearly, like, again, my opinion, who knows, he maybe just like some problems might mean that, I'm just not able to race. But for me, that reads as, you can pull out, but you're not going to race this year for GB. That's the way I interpreted it. So I was like, okay, cool. Bullshit blinders back on, like, crack on with the trials. I'm doing it, that's fine. I'll ignore everything else. I'll pretend I'm getting sleep, whatever. So did the time trial, again, not doing well. Started to get a stabbing pain in my chest. Pushed through, managed to get, kind of 4th or 5th in the time trial. A good time, maybe 2 or 3 seconds off of first. Again, the time trial isn't that important. So that wasn't that reflect. I'm not saying that's reflective of where I was. But yeah, I did that. And after that time trial, like constant stabbing pain in my chest, like breathing I couldn't take deep breaths. My voice started to go, phlegm and stuff in the throat, like very, very bad. And then I said, well, if I'm able to do that time, maybe I can do it again in the semi. But did the semi, got like 700 in, and I just like started like trying to breathe, and like you know, when you've got like fluid in your chest, like you can feel that gargling, like you're kind of like breathing kind of half water. Like it felt like that. I was like, like gargling in my throat as I was breathing, trying to race. I remember one of the other guys I was racing with said he heard me breathing like that, and knew I was done. And yeah, I finished the race. I was furious when I finished the race. Stormed out of the boat and just got in the car and drove. I've never done this before. I got tied down my boat, again slamming the doors and stuff I just never do, and drove like 400 miles home back to Glasgow with no brakes. I was just furious. Like I remember I spoke to Pauline on the phone and stuff. She said she's never heard me in that way, like just not me. Took off, didn't say a thing, and just, yeah, I was out of there. Then come Tuesday, again, still very unwell, bedridden, back at home, and absolutely furious. Stormed home, didn't tell them I was leaving. I was too pissed off to tell them. And then, you know, I got a call Monday, Tuesday. They wanted me to come back down. Well, come in. They thought I was just around the corner where my flat was. And I had to tell them that, like, I just left. Like, obviously, like, so yeah, I was like, look, I was so ruined. I was just destroyed. Like, my body was in bits. I could barely, like, get out of bed. And they're like, right, okay. I said, I was like, look, I've just left. I was too pissed off. I had to leave. And they were like, okay. And then I was kind of saying on the phone, I was like, look, I'm so ruined. We had the World Cup in 7 weeks. Again, something I was massively looking forward to. And I said my condition, you know, I knew my body. I was like, I just don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I don't think I'm ready. Like I know my body well. I know when it can do something. I have a suspicion that I'm not going to be able to do it. And I came back down, and obviously when I did come back down like a week later or something, the coaches were a bit baffled as to like why I took off. And again, I was keeping this all to myself because I don't want to be seen as like the person that's kicking up a fuss. I wanted to be Mr. Yes Sir, No Sir still, which I regret doing. And yeah, they just, again, the lack of trust came in. Like, oh, why did you leave? Like, why would you do that? You trying to get out of this? So you know what, the big one that Paul said was, why did you say you can't think you're going to be able to do the World Cup in 7 weeks? Like, that's 7 weeks. You'll be able to do that. That's in 7 weeks. Like, he thought I was trying to get out of it. Like, he thought I was here for just a job. And again, this is something I think, my opinion, want to be very clear. I think it was held against me that I actively enjoyed training so much, because I think it became perceived that I enjoyed because I enjoyed training so much, it meant that I wasn't there to win. And again, my opinion, I think that maybe they were perceiving people who would complain more or not be happy to be there, or, you know, moan and strop all the time and drag their feet, that they would see that as like, oh yeah, like, again, this is where the inability to understand an elite mindset comes in, where they look at somebody like complaining all the time and say, oh, they're so competitive, they want to win so badly that they're willing to put up with this, something that they hate so much. Like, that would be viewed as a good thing. Again, complete subjectiveness. Again, is that a word? My opinion. But I think that because I actively enjoyed training, enjoyed the process so much, that they thought that I didn't want to be there for the racing. And I was like, I mean, yeah, I didn't even know what to say to that, to be honest. Like, I love training and stuff, but, you know, getting to travel the world and race and, you know, I say represent. I'd rather represent Scotland, but it's pretty cool getting to race for GB and stuff. Represent Scotland through GB. But yeah, race the best people in the world. Like, literally, compete against the best people in the world. Like, they think I wanted out of that. But again, that's their opinion. But yeah, anyways, we didn't know what was wrong with me. I was staying down there. They kept trying to like get me to go out, so I would go out for like 2 or 3K. And like literally just like drop my legs, like my legs would just be like that, and like my heart rate would be up to 170. I kept coming in and being like, look, no, like something isn't just not right. I'm not feeling right. And again, the lack of trust, they just didn't believe me. And they're like, no, you'll be okay, right. What's the plan then? Okay, what's the plan? Again, I was working with the doctor at the time. I'm not holding anything against them. They were pressuring the doctor as well to make the decision as well. So the doctor recognized that I wasn't well and wasn't ready. But again, they were making it very clear that if I'm not doing the World Cup, then again, that's going to cause me problems. So it's like, well, I did the trial, like you said, and you said that wasn't going to cause me problems if I did it, and I did it, and now I've got, a severe illness that's, well, not severe illness, but I'm not right. But yeah, anyways, ran it, kept running blood tests and stuff. They kept thinking I was trying to pie it off, in my opinion, to be clear. And yeah, I found out I had glandular fever. So I think when they realized that, again, glandular fever is mono/Epstein-Barr virus. Basically just causes like extreme, like kind of starts off as like cold symptoms, but can be really bad. Some people can get like chronic fatigue from it for life. But I was just ruined for like 6 months. And yeah, I think as soon as he did the poll, phoned me and stuff afterwards, and he changed his tune a little bit. He realized that he screwed up. And yeah, just told me to go home and rest, obviously, because I was going to be up for a while. So I had plenty of time to think about it. I was like, I did not want to be back there. The furthest thing from it, I just did not want to be back. But yeah, again, long story short, I was told I needed to be back performing by November trials. Again, this was April 22. I needed to do a good performance at November 22 to secure my spot. As I got closer, I knew that just wasn't going to happen. I had a strong suspicion that I didn't want to go back, but I was trying to come back training just to see how it felt. And I just wanted to put myself in a position where I could say that I knew I could kind of get back to roughly where I was. And if I basically didn't want a factor in me retiring and quitting to be that I just wasn't fit. Like I wanted to try and put myself into a position where I was fit again to then make the decision that, okay, I'm fit. I don't want to be back. And yeah, I think an important question I asked myself was if I could be in peak shape, if I could be the best rower in the world, would I want to be back in that environment? And yeah, the answer to that was no. And yeah, it was a very tough decision. I got so close to achieving my dreams in the big scheme of it, but I'm very happy with what I did. I always used to say I want to put myself in a position where I can look back and say I literally did everything I possibly could in order to get myself as fast as possible. And if I do that, then I won't have any regrets. And I don't have any regrets. Maybe the only regrets are just not standing up to the bullshit. It is what it is. And I very much know this is the right decision I made. And there's a lot of positives now, like leaving rowing and stuff. But, even just trying to get back to rowing, going out on a boat sometimes, again, I don't want to use the word, PTSD is exaggerating it. But there were some things, that would trigger, again, I don't want to use the word trigger because it's more severe mental health problems that's associated with. But there are some things that I would do where I would go out rowing and it would be a crosswind that reminded me of a viz, and I would just lose it. And anything that sometimes would just remind me of being back there just was so massively off-putting. And I started trying to get back. I was experiencing chronic stress, headaches. I was grinding my teeth all the time, and yeah, it was just horrible. And I knew I couldn't be back there. So yeah, there's a part of me that is jealous. I'll be jealous of the guys that get to go and race at the Olympics and stuff. I'll still be cheering for them, but at the same time, it'll be hard, I think. I don't know what it's going to be like, but I think it will be hard to watch. And I'm happy. I'm still friends with loads of them and stuff, and I'm very happy for them. And I wish them the best, and I wish all the support staff there the best. But look, I'm going to be really clear. I think that Paul Stannard has a massive misunderstanding of what performance sport is, and I'm going to go on record to say that and throw my name under the bus in terms of partnerships with British Rowing. But I think that it's a massive epidemic in a lot of sporting arenas where people in charge think they have this idea of what performance sport is, and they've never had an elite mindset themselves. And I think it's resulting in a lot of mental health problems. I'm lucky that I came out of it without many. I'm going to therapy now, but not for any sort of I don't think it's for any of those reasons, really. Just sort of maybe more minor stuff in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, I think it's causing massive problems, and that's a big part of why I did this video. I mean, I'm trying to not make it seem like I'm being, I am bitter, and it's hard, and I wasn't ranked high, so you could easily say that I'm just jealous, and ex-GB rower who is bottom of the system, like, kicks up a fuss and makes all these excuses. You could easily see that. I could totally understand that, but I think that there's just this environment that I think is the only way to perform, and I think you can get results doing it, but I think there's a better way to do it, to put trust and faith in the athlete, and one that's also not going to result in depression afterwards. So yeah, and again, for me, that's more important than winning a gold medal, but maybe that's why I quit. Not to say that anybody that's in my position should quit. It's totally their decision and stuff, and people that will go through that and stick with it to achieve that, I totally admire that. At the same time, it's the coaches that are antagonizing it, and they, again, I'll say, Paul, like, very much twisted my heart and destroyed a lot of my love for rowing for a time, and yeah, I'm not the first and I won't be the last, and they're on track right now to go on and win lots of gold medals at the Olympics, and that's fantastic. And yeah, it's just I'm worried that they're going to think that's the reason. The reason is because of that formula gets used, and think that it's the only way. So yeah, again, I don't know where to finish. Who knows what's going to happen after this video. I don't know how much I'm going to actually put in it. I might go and cut some bits out. But yeah, there we go. Yeah, I would like to see sport change and these toxic environments change. And I just really strongly stand against the idea that you have to make an athlete feel uncertain about their position and create a toxic environment in order for them to then think, right, I'm just going to train harder. Like, that's just not how good athletes are motivated. And it does work in the short term, but it just destroys people's lives. And I think there's a better way to do it. Anyways, totally, hey, that's my opinion. There's some objective facts in there for sure, but it's the way it's, and like, yeah, it's my opinion, so it's open to criticism. So hey ho, there we go. But yeah, again, okay, bye. Right, I'm not good at signing off, but bye.